As I step into your restaurant this evening, with the warm lights reflecting off polished wood and the quiet hum of anticipation filling the room, I can't help but notice how confidently the space speaks even before a single dish arrives at the table, and I'm curious to know whether this atmosphere mirrors the philosophy behind your cooking.
I'm glad you felt that, because for me a restaurant should whisper its intentions the moment someone enters, not shout for attention but gently invite curiosity, much like my food, which is designed to unfold slowly rather than impress all at once. And yes, the ambience reflects my belief that dining is an emotional journey rather than just an act of eating.
That's an interesting perspective, especially in a time when many chefs seem obsessed with dramatic presentation and instant impact. So I wonder, as a young chef who has already earned a reputation for thoughtful cuisine, what first pulled you into the kitchen and made you choose this path rather than something more predictable?
Honestly, my journey began not with ambition but with necessity, because growing up in a small household where food was our main language of love, I learned early that a well-cooked meal could soften arguments, heal long days, and create moments of silence filled with understanding. And somewhere between chopping vegetables beside my mother and experimenting alone late at night, cooking became the only place where I felt completely myself.
That sense of intimacy certainly comes through in your opening dish, which balances comfort and complexity in a way that feels deliberate rather than accidental, and as I taste it, I find myself wondering how much of your personal story you consciously pour into each plate that leaves your kitchen.
Every plate carries a memory, even when the guest doesn't know it, because while the flavors may seem refined and modern, the emotions behind them are old and deeply personal, and I believe that if a chef doesn't feel something while cooking, the diner will sense that emptiness even if they can't explain it in words.
That idea challenges the traditional belief that technique should come before emotion, and yet your technical precision is undeniable. So I'd like to know how you balance discipline and feeling without letting one overpower the other in such a demanding environment.
It's a constant negotiation, almost like a quiet argument between my head and my heart, because technique gives structure to emotion and emotion gives meaning to technique, and in the kitchen I try to honor both by practicing relentlessly so that when it's time to cook for guests, my hands move with confidence while my mind remains open to intuition.
Watching your team work, I notice a calm focus rather than the chaos often romanticized in professional kitchens, which makes me curious about your leadership style and how you create an environment where creativity can exist without sacrificing consistency.
I believe fear has no place in a kitchen that wants to grow, because while pressure is unavoidable, intimidation only stifles curiosity, so I lead by listening, by allowing mistakes to become lessons instead of punishments, and by reminding my team that perfection is a direction, not a destination.
That philosophy seems especially relevant today, when diners are more informed and more critical than ever, and as someone whose job is to analyze and judge, I have to ask how you personally handle criticism, especially when it's harsh or misunderstood.
Criticism is uncomfortable, but it's also honest, and while praise feels warm and validating, it's criticism that sharpens you if you let it. So I've learned to sit with it, separate ego from intention, and ask myself whether there's truth hidden beneath the words, even when they sting.
That's a mature outlook, particularly in an industry where chefs are often portrayed as defensive or fragile artists. And as I move on to your main course, I'm struck by how the flavors evolve gradually, almost inviting reflection rather than demanding attention.
That's intentional, because I want diners to slow down, to pause between bites and notice how their thoughts change as the dish unfolds, since food, like conversation, becomes meaningful when it creates space for thought rather than rushing toward a conclusion.
It's refreshing to hear a chef speak about food as dialogue rather than performance, and it makes me wonder how you view the future of dining, especially as trends shift so quickly and sustainability becomes more than just a buzzword.
The future of dining, in my opinion, lies in responsibility paired with sincerity, because cooking should respect ingredients, farmers, and traditions without becoming preachy or exclusive, and I believe the next generation of chefs must learn to cook not only with creativity but with conscience.
That sense of responsibility is evident in your ingredient choices, which feel local yet thoughtfully curated. And as someone who has eaten in countless restaurants across cities and cultures, I find your approach quietly confident rather than loud or performative.
Confidence, for me, doesn't come from awards or recognition but from consistency, because if a guest returns and feels cared for every single time, then I know I'm doing something right, even if the world outside the restaurant never notices.
As dessert arrives, delicate yet comforting, I realize that your cooking leaves behind a lingering emotion rather than a single dominant memory, and that's rare in a world obsessed with extremes.
That means more to me than any review, because if someone leaves with a feeling they can't quite name but don't want to forget, then my food has done its job.
I came here prepared to analyze, critique, and compare, but I find myself leaving with admiration not just for your food, but for the clarity with which you understand why you cook, and that, in my experience, is what separates a good chef from a truly meaningful one.
Thank you, because conversations like this remind me why I chose this path, and they reassure me that as long as I cook with honesty and care, the right people will understand, even if they don't all agree.